As a small business owner, I realized and I learned that a lot of areas of law can significantly affect my business decision making, such as contracts, sales, product liability, internet law, social media, and torts. For instance, when I opened my coffee shop in Mexico, I partnered with a couple of other people, and I filed as a sole proprietorship because I was primarily funding this shop. On the other hand, in my business in the US, I partnered with another friend, and we filed for a limited liability corporation. He came in with a certain amount of funding, and I came with a different amount. And in Mexico, one day, one of my partners decided that he was not going to open the next day. Just like that. There was no way for me to make him liable for any losses. And on my business in the US, my other partner decided eventually he was going to leave. We had a contract, and based on our investment, I minimized my risk. So my loss was actually minimum to none. Based on this example, of risk management through contracts. Can you elaborate on some major risks involved in each of the areas that we mentioned, such as contracts, product liability, social media, and torts? And also how managers and business owners should deal with these risks?
Yeah, I think it's one issue we lawyers run into is you have the enthusiasm of the business people, of the partners, and the lawyer will come in and to a certain extent put a damper on everything because you're enthusiastic to get going, and a lawyer wants to talk about, okay, what happens if the business goes under? Well, a lot of times business people don't want to talk about that because they don't anticipate that. Their optimism is such that the business is never going to die.
You don't want to think about it.
You don't want to think about that. So why would you want to discuss how you're going to dissolve the company when, as far as we're concerned, the company's never going to dissolve? So a lawyer often has to bring up sensitive things that they're a challenge for the business people. So that can be a touchy part and something that the business owners may not want to actually deal with.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
But it's great that you guys did deal with that because, as you found, it's much easier to, if you've already talked about what you're going to do, if things go bad or if different scenarios happen, how are you going to handle it? And that's a really important thing. So I think the easiest way maybe is to walk through sort of when you were starting your business, what different pieces did you run into? And of course, the first one is, what form are we going to do of this business? How are we going to, kind of structure we're going to have? And again, you want to go to a lawyer after you've talked to all the partners, because each one is very different depending on what your exposure is, what your liability is, how much time do you want to spend working on maintaining the corporation versus how much time you want to spend marketing your business. If you create a company that's so complicated and you're spending 20% of your time administering it, that's not good for your business. So you want to have as least friction as possible, and yet still have the liability and the protection that you need. You may not want to come up with a complicated structure. How optimistic are you? Are you going to want to sell shares? I think you're going to go public. It might change how you want to do things. You may just want to take out a huge insurance policy and just let things fall where they may, and then just have the insurance cover it. It costs a little more, but it makes it much less hassle. Again, lawyers can talk to you about that. The next thing you're thinking about, probably, I don't know, maybe I should ask you what you're thinking about. What is how you're going to fund it? Where are you going to get the money for this venture? How are you going to take care of any investors? Are they going to become actual shareholders, or are they just part of the company? They're partners. So that's a consideration. Eventually, you're going to maybe hire an employee. Well, that means before that, you probably get a shop, right? Where you're going to locate. What decisions go along with that? Are you going to buy a piece of property? Are you going to rent a piece of property? What consequences and what kind of ownership do you need to have in order to make that happen? And what are the liabilities of each one? If if you own the property and someone falls through the roof, it's a much different thing than if you're renting from a landlord and someone falls through the roof. Who's going to be liable for that? And what kind of cost is there to mitigate that risk? So we've talked about that. Eventually you're going to be hiring people, and that's the biggest step for people, especially small businesses. Once you start hiring people, you bring in a huge more regulation and more permitting and more liability, because if they're under your employee, you're liable for them, what they do, to an extent. And a lawyer can help you that in terms of how much, if they go out and murder someone, they're probably not acting within your scope of employment. But if they hit someone in a delivery truck they're driving that's your truck, it probably is your responsibility. If they harass a customer, likely your responsibility. Depends how much training have you done, things like that. So each one of those is a challenge, depending. Did you have employees in your company?
I did, actually. I had a couple on each of the coffee shops. And initially, we hired them as part-time because there was less liability and less insurance to pay. So yeah, we did have employees, and we minimized our risk by hiring them at part-timers. Yeah.
To an extent, you limit, but there's a lot of risks. That once you hire them, you have the risk.
Correct.
No matter what. Yeah. So that's always tricky. Accounting becomes much more challenging. How are you going to take care of your books? Because you have liability to pay your taxes, and what are the consequences if you don't pay your taxes, or if you're late, or things like that.